everyone. For today's project, you're going to need 2 pieces of medium or heavyweight interfacing, 13 by 13 inches, and a bunch of scraps. So I'm making sure that I have the shiny side of my interfacing facing upwards because that's where you're going to stick the fabric to. And then I just laid a piece of fabric down with the right sides up, and then laid another piece with the right sides down and lined it up as best as I could. I sewed a 1/4 inch, and then I'm just going to keep building around this and making like a crumb block or a scrappy block, and then I'm going to trim off all the extra in the end. This is a great project for using up all your scraps and smaller pieces and stuff that you don't really have anything planned for. I have a lot of scraps, so I will be having a lot of scrappy projects in the future. So as you can see, I just sewed pieces on, and then now I'm almost done my first square and it filled it up nicely, and I'm going to start with my second one and repeating the same process. Some pieces are bigger than others and some are smaller, but it doesn't matter. You just trim off the extra fabric wherever you need to, and you just keep building around. If you want a place where you can share your little scrappy projects or even quilty projects, be sure to join my Facebook group. It's in the description box below. And here I'm just ironing everything down to make sure that it's sticking to the interfacing, and then I'm going to flip it over and then trim off all the excess so that I have a nice clean block. And then here I'm just marking 3 by 3 inch squares on 2 corners of my square, and then I'm going to cut those out. This is going to be so that I can make boxed corners. It makes it a little bit easier later. And then I have 2 pieces of interfacing, also 13 by 13. I'm doing the same thing, cutting 3 by 3 inch squares out. And here I'm just marking a 3 inch opening so that I will have a spot where I know not to sew, because I want to make sure I have room for turning it all right sides out later on. So put your lining fabric right sides together and sew along both sides and on the bottom, except for that 3 inch opening that we marked. And then the interfacing, place that right sides together and then sew along the sides and on the bottom. Once I have sewn everything, I'm just going to take my iron and kind of press the side seams open. I did sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then once we've ironed it all, we're just going to squish those corners together to make sure that our side seam and our bottom seam are lining up nicely. Just make sure that that's all nice and even, and then squish it so that it lays flat. I used a clip to hold it all in place. You can pin it or clip it. It's up to you, whichever method you prefer. So you want to repeat this step with all of your corners on your outer layer and on your inner layer. If you like these kind of videos, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button or consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps my channel grow, and I do appreciate it. And I am thankful for all the people who take the time to watch my videos. All right, now that we've sewn those seams, we're just going to take our outer layer and we're going to turn it right sides out. We're not going to do that to the lining. We're going to leave it wrong sides out. It'll all make sense later. And then we're just going to take this outer layer and we're going to shove it inside the liner. This way our pretty sides will be touching. Yeah, so you just want to shove your outer layer in there nice and tight, and then you want to match up your side seams and then clip those in place. And then I just add some more clips all the way around once I have my seam allowances lined up. That way everything just stays nice and even, so that doesn't look all weird and wonky when you sew the top. That way when you turn it right sides out, it'll look nice and neat. And here again, I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, making sure that I backstitch at the beginning and at the end. And then just making sure that I try to keep a nice even 1/2 inch seam allowance, because again, it'll affect the look. Now reaching through that opening that we left on the liner, we're just going to pull our outer layer through there and just go slow. It might be a little bit tough and you don't want to rip out your stitches. And then you want to turn your lining right sides out and then find that opening you left and then just line everything up nicely. You can machine stitch or hand stitch. I machine stitched. And then just shove your lining into your bucket and just push it down. And then just with your fingers, you just want to roll it and kind of finagle around with it to get that seam to look nice. And then once we're all done that, I'm going to give it a little press just so it stays in place a bit better and it looks a little bit crisper. And then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and then I'm going to top stitch it. Here I did about a 3/8 inch of a seam allowance, but you could really just do whatever you want. It's just to kind of hold everything into place. You could even use some decorative stitches here if you wanted to, but I didn't want to. I just wanted to get a little scrappy project done. And there, now that we have that all done, you can either leave it the way it is, or you can kind of fold over the top, and then that way your lining fabric will actually show and give you a nice little border. I decided to use scraps to make myself a scrappy bucket to throw my scraps in. I'm going to have this on my cutting table to put all my cutoffs in. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching.